welcome to the American Small Business League podcast. I am Bruce the Taurus, and with me is Bushra Amiwala, who is running for Congress as a Democrat in Illinois' 9th District, which includes part of Chicago. I'm going to read a little bit about you, Bushra, and then say hello. Her priorities include education, economic justice, immigration, and health care. She's running because, quote, the rich are getting richer, the middle class is shrinking, special interest groups are plaguing our elections, there are humanitarian crises worldwide, and our taxpayer dollars are paying for it, end quote. Thank you very much for joining me today, Bushra. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thanks for having me, Bruce.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this. I'm going to read just a little bit more about you. Bushra has an MBA, a BS in Information Systems, and a double minor in Community Service Studies and Public Policy Studies. In 2019, Bushra was elected to the Skokie School District 73.5 Board of Education and was reelected in 2023, running unopposed. And as you know, we just reviewed, first half is going to be all about you and why you're running, what you want to do for your district, and then our small business issues, so I can get your thoughts and feelings and opinions about all those. So how do you want to start telling me you why you're running, what great things you want to accomplish for your district?
Amazing. Well, thanks again, Bruce, for hosting today. A little bit about me. I always say my story is incomplete without sharing my parents' story first. My parents came to the United States from Karachi, Pakistan in the 80s in pure immigrant fashion with a $20 bill and an abundance of dreams. They built their life in this congressional district brick by brick. My dad's a small business owner, my mom's a teacher, and growing up, I attended the top and bottom ranked public schools in this community. And it was the differences in the public schools I saw growing up that became a guiding principle for me. It was that North Star, and it actually created this spirit of service that stemmed from gratitude. I was so grateful for everything that we had being born and raised in this country. So for me to get elected to represent the public schools I attended as a kid has been an honor and a privilege of a lifetime. I recently left my 5 year long career at Google to run for the seat full time. And I know you mentioned, and I have an MBA from Northwestern University, which happens to be in district as well. And the reason I decided to run was after a congresswoman announced retirement after serving for almost 28 years. I went on this market research tour where I had 28 conversations with people, where I had 200 conversations with people in the district, essentially posing the question, who can we be excited about? And a lot of those conversations ended with, well, if not you, then who? So I announced my campaign and candidacy in a crowded race with 17 people. I'm proud to be the only woman of color in the race. Ironically, this is a white minority district. We pride ourselves on diversity in this community. But the top three issues that I'm advocating for, one is Medicare for all, a universal healthcare model that's economically viable, fiscally responsible, and it's a logical mode for a country to adopt to. Second is supporting immigration with a clear path to citizenship. So I'm thinking about the people that come here on a work visa who might get laid off overnight. What does their path to citizenship look like? Apologies for the lights. And then people who come here on a student visa who might not find employment within a year of graduating. What does their path to citizenship look like? And then finally, my story really does start and stop at education. Right now, we're seeing communities in this district that literally cannot afford to live where they are because property taxes are so expensive. And I believe that every single person in this country should have access to high quality public education system and models in place. And it's pushing legislation that impacts that on that front too. So it's a little bit about a lot of it around my background and why I'm running, and happy to answer specific questions.
When did you uh how long had you been thinking, maybe you're going to repeat yourself, about running for a seat in the House? What was that evaluation process like for you?
The main question that I asked people when I was deciding to run, and for me, I've always dreamed about representing this community in Washington. After getting elected initially, to me, I found oftentimes people coming to me with constituent service related problems and concerns that I had scrappy ways with community partner groups in solving. But as a school board member, I don't have a constituent services department. So that part of serving is something that always meant the most to me, to solve the problems that everyday people are facing and solving them with teams. But when I was asking people in this community, the question was, who can we be excited about to represent us in this seat? And not just someone who's exciting, but someone who's exciting and has experience and has been saying the same issues they're advocating for since the inception of their involvement. And I think that consistent piece is one that really stood out to a lot of people and myself when it came to the decision of running for this seat.
The top priorities you mentioned, health care for all, Medicare for all, or however you phrased it.
Mm.
And the second one, I think, was immigration. And the third one, I forget, remind me, what was
Education.
education. Those are strong. And how much has that been verified to you through the years? Like, yes, that's exactly what we want you to tackle. Talk about how important those things are, the top of mind to the people in your district.
So the day that we're recording this, we just had our 230th meet and greet in the district, and that's at someone's home, living room, garage, backyard, front yard, you name it. And in those conversations, we have met and spoken to almost 3,000 people through that single avenue alone. That doesn't account for the thousands of doors that I've personally knocked on since announcing my candidacy and campaign. And yes, the top three issues that I brought up constantly come up, and it's a part of my pitch when I meet a new prospective voter or person as well. I've also found that even something like education, that is the root cause to a lot of different things, such as housing, even as an example, or general affordability that isn't talked about enough. I think even something like Medicare for all is the solution of the affordability crisis that we see in our country today. So although it's those three kind of high level topics, they each have subtopics within and embedded within them that serve as a connecting point, regardless of the person that I'm speaking to in our district. And it typically does fall within those three. But then a lot of times I also hear threats to our democracy, which has been coming up a lot more recently, where people are concerned that Trump might run for a third term, where people are thinking that there isn't a checks and balances system in place anymore with the judicial branch or even our legislative branch right now. And that is why being a member of the House that calls for impeachment is so important.
When did you launch your campaign or announce your campaign?
In June 2025.
Maybe talk some about your career accomplishments, et cetera, that separate you from your competition.
So people in this district should know that they have a choice between 17 different candidates to represent them in this seat. And that's the Democratic primary alone. It's a reminder to voters in this district that this is an 80% blue district, meaning the primary election, assume it's the general election. Like that decision is going to be made in March. And assume we don't even have a Republican opponent at that point. So the person we elect in a safe blue district like Illinois 9, in a safe blue state like Illinois, that is the member of the House that is going to pave the way and champion the best pieces of legislation and the most broadest coalition building to get things done in Washington. Like that is going to set the tone. So for me, I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race with experience in the public, private, and nonprofit sector, which means I know how to do three things: how to manage budgets, problems, and people. And I'm the only candidate in this race that has not trying to get to know the community I'm hoping to represent as a candidate now, but I've been bridge building and coalition building and in partnership and community with teams across this district for decades now. And yes, I'm still only 27 years old.
Who's the incumbent right now?
It's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, who was not seeking re-election.
Thank you. Has she been popular?
She has been popular in district. Absolutely. Jan has been a great progressive champion in the district and nationally as well.
Great. Do you have some kind any relationship with her?
Yes, so Congresswoman Schakowsky has been attending my annual birthday service projects, where basically on my birthday, we will give back to the community in some way. She has been attending those since I turned 20 years old. And every year I do a Ramadan dinner. Ramadan is a holy month for Muslims where people fast from dawn to dusk. She comes to that dinner iftar party that I host every year as well, and also speaks at that event. She's definitely a dear friend and mentor of mine. And Jan's legacy is something that I hope the person that gets elected always keeps in mind.
How are you dealing with the challenge of financing your campaign?
Yes, so it is extremely difficult to fundraise and to pay for all things that go into campaigning. Unless you're independent wealthy or know people who are independent wealthy, it's really difficult. And even if you know one or two people that are independently wealthy, by the way, who might write you a check, there are campaign contribution limits too. So I'm really proud to have raised over $1 million in my campaign, most of which comes from relationship driven giving, meaning I sit down with a person, I answer the hardest questions they want me to. We talk about what's important to them. And that means I'm not relying on false promises. I'm not relying on, a disconnectedness with the people that are funding my campaign. I know who they are by name, and they hopefully can speak to that. They know who I am as well. So what's kind of interesting is an unconventional way of fundraising. I definitely leaned into LinkedIn as a social media platform where I've built my professional network over the years through the duration of my career. And there are people I've reached out to who I've set up one-on-one meetings with, and I'll make the pitch, tell them about my race. And a lot of the people who have donated to my campaign are first time donors as well. They're not used to donating to political candidates. And I've been on this crusade trying to educate what it means to contribute to a political candidate. It's not tax deductible, right? It doesn't count as charitable giving. So, all of that I simultaneously have been educating people on while still being very, very competitive as far as fundraising and resource management in the campaign.
What are you most proud of about your district?
So 35% of the people that live in my district, they don't speak English as their primary language. The top three languages spoken are Spanish, Polish, and Urdu. And I'm kind of proud that I can speak two out of the three, Urdu and Spanish, but we'll definitely learn some Polish just to say I can speak to that as well. And I'm so proud of the communities that live here in harmony, in unison, because when we had one of the very first ICE kidnappings that happened in our backyard summer of last year, the amount of community members that showed up to have a meal train for the impacted family, who offered to pick up groceries for the impacted family so they wouldn't have to leave their home if they didn't feel safe enough to offer picking up and dropping off kids in that family, right? Like seeing that grassroots community driven organizing is what I'm most proud about as well.
And the primary you say is in March.
Yes, the primary is in March. Election day is March 17th.
I feel like starting to ask you about the small business stuff. Are
Sure.
you ready for that?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's go ahead.
I want to just remind you and get everyone up to speed who's watching and listening. My organization, the American Small Business League, has one main focus and then one project to kind of shine light on the focus. The focus is the fact that small business contracts largely go to big businesses, federal contracts. A couple $100 billion a year is supposed to be poured into our small businesses, but big businesses capture those contracts they have for decades with the collusion of the SBA, which is the agency that's supposed to protect small businesses and oversee this contracting requirement. 23% of all federal contract dollars are supposed to go to small businesses. And every year the SBA says, done, met that, we surpassed it, everything's fine. How about a loan? And unfortunately, that's a big fraud. It's a big lie. And people can go to our site, asbl.com, and see the evidence for that and make up your own mind. And it deprives our economy of a couple million jobs not being created that the small businesses would if they got that revenue, if they got those contracts to do that work. 99.9% of all businesses in America are small businesses by the government's too big definition of five up to 500 employees. 98% of all businesses in America have less than 100 employees. We think that should be the cutoff We are truly a small business nation. But we see small businesses getting around only 3% of federal contracts every year, not 23%. That means over 96, 97% of those contracts, Bushra, are going to the 1/10 of 1% of companies in America that are big businesses. They're already big. They don't create one new job to do that work. That's what we've been in the business of exposing for decades. Dozens of congressional investigations through the years have found the same thing. The
Mhm.
SBA's own Inspector General Office has issued reports confirming that the diversion of small business contracts to big businesses is the biggest problem when it comes to federal contracting. All the different federal agencies have different rules, different requirements, et cetera, that allow them to give small business contracts to some of the biggest businesses in the country and even in the world. And no president is on the side of big business. No president exposes this. No administrator of the SBA exposes it. They all collude in the false perception that, oh, the contracts are going where they're supposed to. No, they're not. Finally, I'll describe our Don't Cheat Women project and then take a breath and I want to learn what you think and desire and want to do on behalf of our small businesses. Women own 40% of all businesses in America. They sell what the government buys. The federal government buys everything. It's the world's biggest purchaser of goods and services. And yet, the law says 5% of federal contracts must go to women owned small businesses.
Mhm.
And that must change just on the issue of
Yeah.
fairness, but especially because, just like the small business contracts in general, they never get 5% of the contracts. It's really less than 1% every year. What what would be fair for the owners of 40% of all businesses in America who sell what the government buys? Now, when women have all the economic equality that they can have, they can pursue political equality. Right now, this is really where the rubber hits the road.
Mhm.
Men dominate in politics simply because men earn and save more than women.
Mhm.
They donate more to candidates, so then they have more influence with the winners. Men hold 75% of all seats in the House, the Senate, state legislatures,
Yeah.
almost that many governor positions, 75% of all seats in presidents' cabinets, 90% of committee chair and party leadership positions, all held by men who have different values, different priorities, different worldviews.
Mhm.
Half the human race is unfairly excluded from participation in American politics simply because women don't earn and save as much as men. Now, they're on the rise by some measures. I believe they graduate more with higher degrees than men. I believe they start more businesses than men. But everything that can be done to help women achieve economic equality will let them compete for equality in the political arena. And we need their viewpoints, wisdom, values, etc., to consider ourselves sane, let alone civilized. That's what's our don'tcheatwomen.com is where people can learn all about this, which specifically asks to raise from 5% to 15% the
Mhm.
portion that should go to women owned small businesses.
Mhm.
That would push from 23% to 33% of the contracts that should go to small businesses. Obviously, the SBA would need an overhaul to be able to prove so that we could believe when it says, yes, all those contracts went to small businesses. Yes, great. Show us the companies that you're saying are small businesses and got small business contracts. That's what we wrote you about. And we're writing up 2,000 other candidates for the midterms this year, Bushra, and saying, look at this, get convinced, and then run on it, campaign on it, and tell us, does can you explain it in a way that makes sense to people,
Yeah.
that excites them? We think it's a unifier. We think
Yeah.
all women and all fair-minded men are going to say, that's indisputable. This makes
Yeah.
complete sense. And now I'm taking my breath to get your response to all of that.
Yeah. I love that you share with statistics because it comes back to what's logical. Because you can always try to meet people at the, well, this is just the right thing to do. Or you can come back to this is also logical. And even so, it's still not equitable to the ratio of what small businesses are owned by women, by the way. So we're asking for a really incremental increase. I mean, I believe the statistic is 8% of the Fortune 500 CEOs are women. We see this gender-based discrimination be plummeted throughout every single institution of power, whether it's government, to your point, 75% of those seats are held by men. And similarly, we see it in the business realm too. Therefore, it is required that we advocate at the government level to ensure that these protections are placed. Otherwise, the most forgotten about communities are the ones that might not even be able to survive from a business acumen standpoint, let alone advocate for themselves. And we deserve champions in the House that understand that this is not a heavy ask. We see modern countries, industrialized countries around the world, where this is table stakes for them. I'll bring up a country like New Zealand. New Zealand has promised that over 51% of their seats in their government go to Indigenous people, because the Maori community that's indigenous to New Zealand deserves that, right? It's the same thing that we see happening across the board around the world. And I think it's a very healthy, yet not enough way to start, but it starts at advocating at that increase to 15%.
Yeah, nice. Do you how what can you report to me about the state of the small businesses in your district?
So right now we just got our 2025 property tax assessment that's come to residential and commercial properties. A lot of the commercial properties in this district, by the way, are small business owners. And this is the one of the largest hikes that we have seen since 2022 in these communities and in these neighborhoods. And we're seeing that while large corporations can benefit from the edge tax and not pay their fair share in taxes, small businesses and everyday people, the brunt is being put on them. And obviously, as a small business owner, you get taxed through your individual income, you get taxed through the business. While you cannot change the tax code, what you can do is advocate for government subsidies. So I'm very pro increasing the federal minimum wage. In the same breath, I talk about how government subsidies need to be given to small businesses for them to afford to pay their workers the federal minimum wage. And you do that by making corporations, oligarchs, and billionaires pay their fair share. It's all interconnected. And if you advocate for one without the other, that is where the argument sometimes falls short.
Have you ever heard from any other source besides us the complaint that big businesses get small business contracts?
Not in the context of big businesses getting small business contracts, but we have heard from a lot of different small business owners in communities about the unfair way that they're drowning in taxes, or whether it be from a storefront physical standpoint or from an income standpoint. But from the contract standpoint, no, I've only heard of it from all of you. I would love to be able to emulate this as a talking point, something that I think is interesting and worth considering for me. As I mentioned, I have those meet and greets in the district, which are almost hour and a half long settings with me and folks as neighbors, basically. Whereas in a forum setting, like I said, there's 17 people in this race. We all get 60 seconds to answer. And Bruce, I think a lot of the things that you brought up just cannot be digested in a 60-second format or capacity. I think the irony ends up being that once elected, there shouldn't be a reason why any member of the House should be against increasing the federal contract number for women from 5% to 15%. And I would almost, it's like outing the people that are against that. It's like equivalent to taking money from large corporations. It's something that should be public. It's something that I don't think is anything to be proud about. So I will absolutely use this as an additional talking point, an educating point, and point of advocacy when I speak to voters. My only kind of gap in limit is I would hope it's not something that goes over people's heads, which I hope it does not. But when people are in survival mode and they're worrying about when their next bill will come and how they'll afford goods, gas, and groceries, sometimes this can feel like an afterthought.
What would you reemphasize? What would you talk to me about we haven't covered maybe as we kind of wrap into a concluding kind of segment?
As we wrap things up, if anything that Bruce and I talked about today that caught your interest or your eye, I would invite you to learn more on our website, which is bushraforcongress.com, or reach out on social media. You can volunteer around the country. So it's something that we're really excited to be able to offer. We've gotten campaign contributions from all 50 states as well, and would love to have volunteers from all 50 states. But really, people like myself, people like Bruce, we advocate on people that might be drowning within their everyday to have a voice to advocate for themselves. And that is the North Star in which we get involved in these spaces. And it was an honor to be able to join you today on your podcast and connect with your listeners and viewers this afternoon.
Thank you. And so much about you and your campaign and your message is impressive, not least of which, in no particular order, is how you've described you actually meeting and greeting the people of your district. Because the more that you can fill yourself with them and their stories and their hopes and their dreams and their aspirations and their problems, so that when you talk, they hear themselves, it becomes a no-brainer when they listen to the other candidates. Bushra is filled with me and my concerns, or us and our concerns. And that sounds like the product of your past experience competing to serve well on the school board. And if you continue this absorption and interest in the people you represent, have a responsibility toward, and can actually do things for, um, may you have many a long life of such, service and fun, helping people and working with people.
Thank you. I appreciate it, and that's the goal. Thanks for having me today, Bruce.
Thank you. Bear with me while I tell everybody thank you for watching and listening today.